Have you heard of Chekhov's gun? This is a very useful plot device for novelists, an efficient rule of thumb, you could say. Anton Chekhov said that if you have a pistol hanging on the wall in Act 1, then it must fire in the last act. Looks like China's communist regime has taken Chekhov's writing advice in its violent script in Hong Kong. After 19 weeks of peaceful pro-democracy protests, the first bullet has been fired. When China was busy gearing up for its National Day celebrations, the police in Hong Kong launched an offensive. An 18-year-old protester was shot in the chest. Hong Kong is now a battlefield. The police is not sparing even journalists there. And what's worse, the police defended the brutal attack on protesters.
3宗事件裏邊，警務人員都曾經警告，但係無效。生命受嚴重威脅，迫於無奈係使用配槍制止暴力襲擊，做法係合法同埋合理嘅。
This response is shocking. Hong Kong government thinks that shooting at protesters is, quote, lawful and reasonable. But such oppression has only galvanized the protesters. China seems tired at the moment. Now that the National Day is over, it is targeting protesters lock, stock and barrel. Today, Hong Kong's embattled leader Carrie Lam did the unthinkable. She invoked colonial-era emergency powers. Face masks have been banned in Hong Kong starting tomorrow. This could escalate into the worst form of state-sponsored violence on the people. Protesters will now be identified. This is authoritarianism at its most violent. But for now, for Carrie Lam, it's a responsible act. That's what she called it. She also wants the world's sympathy for China's draconian approach.
In this case, the Hong Kong SAR government is invoking and valid existing piece of legislation to make a piece of regulation. And the regulation made fully complies with the spirit and the letter in this piece of existing and valid legislation. So I don't see how you could relate this to a step closer to authoritarianism. This is a responsible act to deal with an extremely difficult situation, which I hope the world has sympathy.
And this emergency law is not just about face masks. The government can now make any regulation if it is in public interest. Emergency allows curfews, media censorship, control of harbours, ports and all transport in Hong Kong. This is China ready to curtail the pro-democracy protests with brute force. They're preparing ground. But every action we know has an equal and opposite reaction. Even before this emergency law came into being, protests have broken out all over Hong Kong. Thousands of people marched through the streets wearing face masks. It's all nearing a tipping point, you could say.
After the law is really established, I think there will be real revolution in Hong Kong. So more people will stand out against the government if the law is really established.
The fact that the emergency laws are invoked points at a bigger threat. The last time China used emergency laws was in the year 1967. That year, China's founder, Mao Zedong, brought in the Cultural Revolution. What followed was state-sponsored violence. Scores of people were identified and killed. It was a purge. Right now, the situation in Hong Kong resembles the Cultural Revolution. First, the police sprayed blue water from cannons to identify protesters. And now, they're demasking them.
With the anti-mask law might imposed by the emergency ordinance, I strongly urge the international community to aware on the de facto martial law might imply in Hong Kong soon, in the next few hours or in the next few days. The world must stand with Hong Kong against Hong Kong transformed to be a police state with martial law.
But there are protesters who are not bothered to use the face mask anymore. They think that anonymity is only hurting the pro-democracy movement. So what happens next? Expect mass protests over this weekend and expect China to identify and target these protesters. Watch this space for the latest.